Hello, and welcome to Michelle Jerson's Passport, Taste, Travel, and Live Well. And now, here's your host, travel expert and journalist, certified trainer and nutrition consultant, Michelle Jerson.
And good afternoon, and welcome to Michelle Jerson's Passport. I'm Michelle. Thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday afternoon. I am very excited because we have an incredible lineup of guests for you today. We cover travel on this show. We cover wellness. We cover dining. We cover the arts in and around New York City. And we have travel. We have a cool travel product we're covering today. And we have a world-renowned plant-based advocate coming up on the show later to talk to you about how to reverse and prevent heart disease. But first, why do you laugh, Marshall Stevenson?
Because we're like the sinning portion of the show.
That's right. I have the beer portion on first. So Marshall Stevenson is a great friend of mine. We go way back. You are a veteran news reporter. You used to report here on the streets of New York City, and now you're taking your reporting a little bit of a different type of reporting.
Well, then I wised up, get out of radio, and start showing people a beer tour.
Exactly. So you started an incredible company. I took some of your tours a few years ago. Now your most recent and very successful tour, the New York Beer and Brewery Tour. You've been running this for how many years now?
Since 2010.
Wow. So
we're now 6th season, and we've been showing people beer in New York. And I'll tell you, in the 6 years that we've been doing it, the beer scene has changed radically.
It really has. What have you seen? Now, let me give out the phone number because I'm sure there are people who have questions. If you're a novice on beer and you have a question for Marshall, or maybe you've been in the beer, I don't want to say beer, but you just like beer. You have any questions, feel free to give us a call, 877-970-2999. So what have you seen change in the New York City beer scene?
You know, when we first started, there were just a couple of breweries, and we strung together these venues. That was really more of a history tour. So yes, we did a few tastings, but New York was the center of beer brewing in America in the 19th century. Give you a sense, in 1900, there were 100 breweries in New York. By 1975, when New York was in crisis, there were 0.
Wow.
Okay, when I started the tour, there were 4, and now they're 24.
Get out of here.
So you've had this explosion. I mean, you probably drink beer too, and you probably never even thought about drinking beer. It's gone mainstream. Even Michelle Jerson
Michelle, who barely drinks
now.
beer.
Right. You know, used to be, do you like beer? It was Miller. I mean, one specific thing that you can point to is that 10 years ago, the word import was the word that you'd want to hear when it came to quality of beer. And today, who cares it's imported?
Right.
Because America, New York, now you look for craft beer, local beer, artisanal food that goes with craft local beer, and that's all in the last 6 years. So even recently, we were going to Bohemian Hall, which is a great place in Astoria.
That place. Yeah,
102
I met you
years
there for
old.
lunch last year.
Yes. And good food, too. But we don't go there anymore because now that there are 24 breweries, we were finding that the very serious beer people who thought, you know, not as much about, look at this used to be a brewery in the 19th century. We do that kind of cool stuff, too.
Right.
They wanted to go to another brewery. So now we go to Single Cut, which, by the way, is amazing.
Where
if you
is
haven't
Single
been
Cut?
there. It's in Astoria, Queens.
Okay.
And a little off the beaten track. So
I like that.
you got to come on our tour.
I would love to. I can't believe I haven't been on your tour yet. And for anybody who would like to go on Marshall's tour, you've been nice enough to give us 2 gift certificates to give away today. But I thought we would make this sort of fun. So you had a question for our listeners. So whoever gets this answer right, you will be the recipient of 2 gift certificates to the New York Beer and Brewery Tour, courtesy of Marshall Stevenson. So what question do we have?
Well, I want to say there's $115 each retail.
Yes.
And you get, and it's a driving tour.
Yep.
And we feed you, and you
What
get.
do you feed us?
Well, pretzels, and then there's an artisanal food pairing with rare beers,
Very
and you
nice.
get to try 12, 13 beers, and we do it in such a way that you don't end up
falling out of your bus seat, or
well, at least it is a bus seat, but no, people don't unless they came and are sneaking or brought the flask, and we do get that on occasion. But most of all, people behave themselves and are really in it to taste the beer. You know, we're not doing keg stands. We're not playing beer pong.
That's really fun, educational. For someone
like
educational.
Let's really hammer that home. This is educational.
Yeah.
You won't have a good time, but you'll learn something.
Oh, I think you'll have a good time and you'll learn something
will.
because I know for myself why I was never a big beer drinker is my only beer experience growing up was my dad drinking like Bud Light at dinner. I was like, this is gross.
Which has its place, by the way. 100 degrees in the shade at a baseball game in the middle of the summer. I'll do Coors Light also.
Right.
Full disclosure.
Okay. All right. So the number to call in, 877-970-2999. Now, we want to know who has the largest per capita consumption of beer in the world. Now, give us our multiple choices.
All right. You forced me to do multiple choice.
Make it somewhat easy.
Is it A, Ireland, B, China, C, Czech Republic, or D, Germany? Okay, so I didn't even make it easy because half the people on the bus when we asked this question say the United States.
Oh, okay.
Or Australia or something like that. Ireland, A, B, China, C, Czech Republic, D, Germany.
I feel like a lot of people may say D, Germany, but I don't think that's going to be the answer. Just because Germany, they're known for their beer. So
you're assuming that I just throw out a trick question here? You're saying it can't be that. It would be too easy.
Exactly. 877-970-2999 if you would like a pair of tickets to the New York Beer and Brewery Tour. So tell me, so you've been doing this for coming up on 6 years now. And, the history is so different from what it was. How has this big movement changed? I mean, I know your tour now, you see many more breweries than just 4, but what else have you seen with this craft beer movement over the years?
Well, let me go back a little bit to talk about, because New York, one of the reasons that it's just a huge beer place and the reason that we started the beer tour here is because New York has always been about beer.
Okay.
We had good water from the beginning. We also had secular population that didn't think that beer brewing and beer consumption was a bad thing. In fact, when the temperance movement, which led to prohibition, came about, this was an assault from Middle America on the awful, misguided sensibilities of the beer drinkers of the Catholics and the immigrants in New York City.
Okay.
So we have this huge beer culture in New York that goes through Prohibition because people didn't stop drinking in Prohibition and continues into the 50s and 60s. Now, what happens in the 50s and 60s is people are leaving New York. It's called suburbanization or white flight, and the city's getting more dangerous, and all the breweries leave. Basically, there's a lot more to this. You'll have to take the tour.
Okay. All
right.
The
breweries all leave. We have our fiscal crisis. There's crime. They're building new breweries. It doesn't make sense to invest in places like Bushwick, which are generally, in this time, like in the 70s, on fire. Literally on fire, like thousands of arson fires. So you get into the 80s now, and we have the Manhattan Brewing Company that opens in Soho with Garrett Oliver, who's now the brewmaster of Brooklyn Brewery.
Okay.
And they start that brewery. Then in the 90s, it's the Brooklyn Brewery. There were a few others that opened and closed, like Times Square Brewery. But they were always these kind of quirky things.
Yeah, so there's so much to dig and to discover here in New York.
Well, then we get into it. Then we get into like right where we are in 2000s. And as the city's getting more popular, beer sort of like takes off. And America starts to realize that they can make good beer too. And you start to have these breweries around the country challenging the Millers and the Buds, which are all one now. It's called InBev. And just a little story to illustrate this point.
Oh, and then we have 8 people, 9 people.
Oh, well, they love
right
it.
now.
Oh, that's they're all going to get it. They're all going to get it
Look,
wrong.
Okay.
Steve Hindy actually.
They're going to get it wrong.
Steve Hindy, who owns Brooklyn Brewery, and he had to do his own deliveries when he first started in the 90s because the distributors were told in no uncertain terms by Budweiser that if they delivered Brooklyn Brewery beer, then they couldn't distribute Budweiser again. They'd lose their jobs and their roots, and so he had to do it himself.
Amazing.
And that's the way it happened.
That's the way it happens. All right, 877-970-2999. Let's see if anybody on the line right now has the answer to your question. Let's go to Rebecca in Brooklyn. Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for calling 970 The Answer. So we asked you, who has the largest per capita consumption of beer in the world? Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, sweetie. As far as I know, Germany.
Well, how are we going to do it? Are we going to, this will make it much easier for the next caller.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, right.
Wrong
That's not
answer.
right. All right.
Sorry, Rebecca. Thank you so much, though, for trying. See, I said everybody's going to assume Germany, but no, not it.
Okay. Now, you see everybody hung up now because they
No,
were all going to say Germany. All right. So A, Ireland, B, China, and C, Czech Republic are the three we have left.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Paul in Queens. Hey, Paul. Thanks for calling 970 The Answer. What's your answer?
Hi, guys. I'm going to guess it's Czechoslovakia because I go to the store and every beer hall is Czechoslovakia.
All right. I mean, we'll give that to you, but it's called the Czech Republic.
The Czech Republic. I apologize.
No apology necessary. You're just living in the Cold War era. The Czech Republic is interesting. Have you ever been there? It's amazing for beer. Like 50 cents a beer.
But all the beers in the store are awesome.
That's right.
I love all the stuff that they have there, all the pilsners and everything that they have.
It's great. So when are you coming on the tour? Well, you got it right. So
when I
got
a free minute, I would love to go.
Awesome. Well, yeah, you better take advantage of this quickly or someone else going to scoop up this gift certificate.
You got it. You're the winner.
All right, Paul, congratulations. Hang on the line. We'll get your info, and Marshall will get you these certificates. It's awesome. But so let's so why is it the Czech Republic? Where does that?
Oh my God, that question, I don't know how to handle it. I mean, there's a beer culture there as well. Beer brewing is ubiquitous. People brew them in their basements, and you have a love of beer from the beginning. This is one of the reasons we have love of beer in New York, because it's really this thread. New York has always been a great beer town. Interesting, when Germans came, because the story about beer has a lot to do with the story of immigration. Germans, unlike the other major immigrant groups in New York, like the Italians, Chinese, Jews, they did not come poor. They came more middle class. And why was that? Because they had a skill, and that was beer brewing.
Got it.
Great
information.
If you love New York, you'll love this tour.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a great tour for those visiting New York. So if you have relatives or friends who are coming to the city to visit, take them on the tour. And for us, we're local. I mean, this is nothing that I knew. I've grown up in New York. I've lived here my whole life. I didn't know any of this about these.
We visit Williamsburg, Bushwick,
okay,
Astoria, and so it's kind of a
cool
way
to see the neighborhoods
to see different, very exciting neighborhoods.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe it. Williamsburg and Bushwick are like what Greenwich Village was in the 60s, and so many New Yorkers have never been there.
And I'm not going to even tell you whether or not I've been there. I've been to Williamsburg, but there are other parts of Brooklyn that I grew up on Long Island. I lived in Queens. I've lived in Manhattan, and there are still parts of Brooklyn I haven't been to.
A lot of hipsters. You can curse that as we're driving by.
Me and the hipsters.
Oh, you like that? Okay.
I like the hipsters.
Oh, I thought it was like fun to make fun of hipsters these days. There are plenty of hipsters. By the way, I'd like to add that we not only do a public tour on Saturday and Sunday, but we also charter groups. So we have, if you go on our website, nybeertour.com, you will see that there are several packages, and some of them are more appropriate for corporations. We do a lot of corporate groups. We do a lot of bachelor parties. We do a lot of birthday parties, and they all have their special groups. So if you have a group of, say, 8 or 9 or more, up to like 100 people,
to spend a bachelor party.
We have packages that are perfect for you, and we can do it during the week. During the week, we don't do as much of the history because the traffic sort of prevents us from going out to. But if you do the regular public tour during the weekend, you'll see vestiges of Old Brewers Row, which I think is the coolest thing. We show you all these artifacts that are fun.
Great. That's awesome. Marshall, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
That's it. I have a present for you.
You have a present for me?
Well, we have these 2 coasters that are from the original Peel's Brewery.
Get out of here.
And they're vintage, and it says from 1965 from Brooklyn.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, these are great. Okay, so one more time, because I know we still have a bunch of people on the line who are hoping to get the answer right. If they want to contact you, if they have any questions, again, website.
Website is nybeertour.com. And we do other tours as well, so you can poke around. We do a city tour as well, and I can be hired privately to do the city tour for the right price. And we go.
Well, I have to say, your reviews on TripAdvisor have been phenomenal, and you have topped the list for years on tour guides. And I attribute that to not only your amazing personality, because I've known you for so many years, you're extremely knowledgeable and you're fun to be with. And I just think
And I'm not the guide you'll probably get if you take the beer tour, because we have a few.
Right, but all of your guides are great. You
They're
train them
wonderful.
all, and they're all wonderful.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Marshall Stevenson, thank you so much for coming on Michelle Jerson's Passport.
So
Always
much
great
fun.
seeing you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you. All right, coming up next, we have Mike Vahey. He is the inventor and owner of the Travel Halo. You know, when you're on the plane and your head is bobbing back and forth and you can't fall asleep, Mike has a solution
Drink beer.
for that. And drink beer, and you'll sleep through the whole flight. Coming up next, right here on AM 970, The Answer.
Listen to us anywhere. TuneIn.com, iHeartRadio.com. Get the app at am970theanswer.com.